Talktainment Radio Worldwide South. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. You're now in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Our topic today is going to be the question mode, and we will have Mr. Fuller explain that, and we will also take your questions that you may have and have him answer them accordingly. 1-877-932-9766. That number will be ready in about 5 to 6 minutes, and then you can start to call in, and we'll do it. Okay, don't forget, and I'm going to ask Ed about the donations to see where we're at on that. Somebody had written about that, so we'll find out. Okay, Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Still learning. Okay, we're going to talk about the question mode. Often you have said that to solve any problems that we will have, or the answer to that is to ask questions. Somebody asked me about that. What do you mean, or what is the compensatory logic behind staying in the question mode?
The logic is all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. All so-called quote-unquote progress is made through the process of questions and answers. And that's a proposition or a supposition, or whatever you want to call it, an idea, a theory, a logical idea, I think, in my opinion. And I think it can be proven simply by testing it, that an inventor, for example, or a person who invents things, thinks about a question. How can I do something better than what is being done now? A person who invented the idea of a carriage that would run with a motor raised a question. The first ideas for flight probably came from someone, most likely, logically speaking, raising a question. How can we get a person to fly through the air? You see birds flying, so that shows that some type of organism, what you call quote-unquote a living organism, can go sailing through the air on something called wings. That's something they named it. Say, why can't a person put on some type of wing? Maybe we can fashion some type of wings where a person can do the same thing. But you can't do it like a bird, so how can you do it? How can a person just go aloft and stay there for a little while? And so that's the form of a question right there. How can a person do it? See, that's a question. How can it be done? Can it be done? And that's everything. Can you go to the bottom of the ocean? How far down? Can that be done? There are some types of species of fish that can go down into the ocean and go so far and can't go any further, and then other species can go farther. Why is it that one species can go farther down and another species can't? You can only go so far and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so they ask the same questions. So it's been, just thinking of logic. Logic meaning cause and effect. So that's how that originated, at least in my mind. I didn't come up with the first idea for asking a question for sure. But I have found from experience and from observation that everything that's ever been done, that mostly that when people said that something couldn't be done, was done through the process of questions and answers. And I notice that any time a problem, people say, well, I have a problem, but I don't know how to solve it. And so they ask, can this problem be solved? So then people start working on it, and many problems have been solved through that process of questions and answers. So after watching that for a while and thinking about it for a long while and observing it for a long while, I came to the conclusion, it still may not even be true, that all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers, without exception. So that's where we are now, as far as my thoughts are concerned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I would like for other people to think along those lines. Do they ever know of a problem that wasn't solved without someone raising a question being in there somewhere, and an answer to that question being provided? Does anybody know of that? I don't think so, but maybe somebody does.
Yes. Well, we'll find out, hopefully. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call to get in contact with the show. And also now, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will read your letters. Okay, this is a question. It says, good morning, Mr. Fuller. A few weeks ago, I had an exchange of views and disagreements with a non-white associate of mine about LGBT issues, rights in public schools. Using VGQ, I stated how the white supremacists are implementing these issues in school curriculums, particularly for non-white children, and expressed how this was an act of racism and a ploy to further confuse the non-white victims of racism. I posed a question to my associate and asked, how does this serve as a constructive effect to the young non-white children? She replied that this is a way to raise awareness and for children to learn how to accept and treat all people correctly, no matter their sexual orientation. Mr. Fuller, do you think teaching children LGBT issues in schools serve a constructive effect? If not, why not? And what do you suggest would be the best method? Thank you.
Well, I would suggest that it be taught the way that I talk about it. That people are the way that they are. I recognize that. People are what they call homosexuals, lesbians. They use a slang term, I guess it's a slang term, or an official term, whatever they choose to call it. Gay, transgender, queer, which used to be a slang term, but now it's an official term, I guess, quote unquote, whatever official means. And they can distinguish and break it down between, the different categories and how one differs from another, and all the variations and what each. And I think that if you're going to teach it, you teach what each person in all those categories do. That's something that I don't hear. I don't hear that discussed at all. Period. I mean, what does a person who is in the queer category? That's a category of sexuality, so I've been told. I didn't know anything about it until I started hearing about it. A queer category that's different from a transgender category, that's different from a gay category, that's different from a lesbian category, that's different from a transsexual category, I guess, and it might be some other categories that people come up with. But how does one differ from another according to not just a label, but what they actually do? What does a gay person do that's different from what a queer person does? That makes the queer person different from the gay person. You got to go into specifics. If you're talking about these categories that everybody should be just, looking into and recognizing and going out of their way, I mean, learning about it like your ABCs. You got to learn this. You got to learn all about this. You can't ignore this. This is something that's absolutely necessary in the school curricula. Absolutely necessary. You can't get through life without knowing all the details of this.
Right.
So pay attention, children. I'm little 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, so that you can get this ingrained into your brain. I mean, and it will do everybody wonders in the future, because this is what the future holds. You've been ignoring this, or you've been sidestepping it, or you've been neglecting the knowledge of this. This is very essential knowledge. This is something you definitely should take up classroom time doing. It's like your ABCs. That's the way it's coming across now, from what I hear and from what I see just on television and everything. So if you're going to make it a super priority, like, hey, this is just as important as going to the moon or curing cancer, well, spell it out. And then tell us what the benefits are from each one of these categories. What are the benefits? And particularly, because you always have to think about to whom you're addressing this to,
yes,
who is supposed to benefit. I took the position that non-white people haven't gotten the male-female thing in order. And I say that. I mean, that is a complete wreck, particularly black people. That's nothing, what is going on between male and female. It's nowhere near what it should be. Nowhere in the neighborhood what it should be. All of our interactions, black male with black female, all over the world,
yes,
is nowhere near what it should be. All right? So when we start adding new categories, we haven't even got the basic categories straight first. So I say we should reserve my recommendation according to what I've written in the textbook, and I'll say it anywhere, and I think this is what I would teach in a school. I say, hey, this is still a wide open field.
Okay.
See, I mean, there's no certainty here.
Okay.
And any scholar, any teacher who say, oh, yeah, we got absolutes on this, and we know for sure that, I mean, we got to put all our energy into LGBTQ. Wait a minute. We haven't even gotten, when it comes to black people, we haven't gotten anything straight. Not to say anything about the eighth area of activity, which is a complete shipwreck.
Yes.
You haven't gotten anywhere near that being what it ought to be under the system of white supremacy.
Yes.
So let's back up here. We got to consider racism in a factor here.
Yes.
When we start talking about LGBTQ,
and that,
or any other area of activity, economic, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war. Let's get it all straight.
Yes. And that,
I mean, and when we start talking about making modifications in sex, you ain't got nothing to modify yet. That makes sense.
Yes.
Because the basis of all of the sexual activity is nowhere near what it ought to be. None of it.
See,
according to the way, what standards you're going to use. Now, if someone says, well, we're going to use a standard that we haven't let you know about yet, this LGBT, we're going to tell you how that factors in to everything that we have planned for the future. Whose future? Are you talking about black people too? And who's doing this talking? Who is doing this talking about black people's future? When you start talking about what black people's sexuality should be, who is doing the talking? Who is doing the leading? I know I didn't.
Right.
This
is the point of the program. Questions and answers. Right there, or question in the question mode, right there, just in that little bit of segment, Mr. Fuller, you ask 5 questions. Real quick. Who's going to do what? When are they going to do it? What are they going to do?
Yes.
We're in the question mode. You have
to
stay.
The questions, and I mean, what is the difference between queer and lesbian?
Yes.
And go into the details. See, somebody once said, it's a cliche saying, you've probably heard it, the devil is in the details. Well, you better believe, hey, some pretty evil stuff may be in those details. Or if you want to use that term, or if you don't want to use that term, you just say something that's not constructive.
Okay.
Maybe in the details.
Okay.
So let's go into the details and see if we talk about some constructive activity here. Because we're talking about activity. We're not just talking about labels. Well, you shouldn't speak against. You shouldn't say anything, and you will be persecuted. Or you will be shut up, or you will be considered an outsider, out of step with modern times, if you say anything against being bisexual, okay? And you might raise a question, well, wait a minute. I'm not talking against bisexuality. I'm talking about really, bottom line, as far as the compensatory code, counter-racist code is concerned. What does it mean when you're talking about it within the context of including black people in it? And what is this supposed to do that's an improvement over everything else?
2 questions right there.
Yes. And as one, and if you're talking about LGBTQ, right? Whatever. Sometimes I get the letters mixed up. If you're talking about that, go into specifics and talk about the benefits, of people who are subject to racism, of what you're talking about, and you're making it a priority.
Yes, sir.
You're saying, hey, let's stop talking about housing. That's old stuff and all like that. Put that to the side. We can get back to that later.
Yes.
Let's stop talking about education. Let's talk about improvements on the jobs and all like that, and better jobs, and jobs that call for greater skills. How are we going to get from point A to point B for the black people, for the non-white people? We're talking about reparations and all this. Put all that on the shelf.
All that.
And let's talk about LGBTQ and make that the central thing, that we take up classroom time. We're talking about college time, sitting there having courses on it. We're going to take up a whole bunch of time talking about all that. Wait a minute. wait a minute. Are there any priorities here? You got people, students sitting here who haven't had breakfast. And you're talking about this is a priority?
We're speaking.
That's a question.
We're speaking with.
This is a priority? Are you kidding me?
We are speaking with.
Or are you committing some type of aggression? Oh. This is just another form of aggression. And that's how the code looks at it at this particular point in 2019.
Okay.
Or you're just coming up with another way to actually do damage, do great damage to the non-white people of this planet. This is just another form of racism when it comes to non-white people. Now, for white people, it might be great progress. But no, you're making this a priority among non-white people, and that is racist suspect right there. According to logic.
Okay, we're speaking with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. The topic today is the question mode. The question mode, and if you've heard him just speak, there was at least 27 different questions that were asked that needed to be answered. We're going to take this phone call to my staff in the back. Would you let me know when I need to make the commercial because of the time? Yeah, just give me the sign. Okay. All right, caller. You are there. You're live with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your call, please.
Yeah, how you doing, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby? The LTD, when I was going to high school, we had metal shop, we had home economics, we had health, we had wood shop, auto shop, and they eliminated all those, and they want to confuse our children with something that's not constructive, with sexuality. And it goes, it is true that they want to put different bathrooms, and it's a government funded, and the schools is government funded, and this is their supremacist way to confuse the non-whites in this country to abandon reproduction. And another question is the 1619 project that a newspaper created. And I was doing a lot of studying and research. The so-called African Americans is the so-called Indian. The state that you come from, Oklahoma, was an Indian territory that they pushed all the so-called Indians, doing the removal of the Indians around the whole country. And that we are the Indians, but they keep us confused about where we come from, who we are, from when we used to eat the buffalo, now we eat the pig. And it's everything. Even Sitting Bull, the one who destroyed Custard, was black. And he was so-called Indian. And then they assassinated him on the reservation. Can you explain, or do you know if Oklahoma was the melting pot of Native American or so-called Indians? And do you have any progenitors that was pushed over into the Oklahoma territory, Mr. Fuller?
Now, the first question was, what do I know if it's a melting pot?
Well, that's the second question. The first question is that the government-sponsored programs, since the government sponsored the school programs, since the government pays for the schools, they get to put the confusion and sexuality on the books in the schools for non-white students nationwide.
Yes, well, I don't know enough about what's going on in the schools now to talk about it. People who are familiar with what's going on in the schools can talk about that more than I can. But I do know what the white supremacists intend to do. They intend to use sexuality, and they're studying in fine detail how to go about scrambling the sexuality, or what I call, under different labels, sexual sabotage of the non-white people of this planet. That's their plan. I'm saying that outright. because all of the indications are that. And without telling you what the benefits are supposed to be, they're just telling you the male with female thing is somewhat peculiar, somewhat obsolete. You don't need to get that together. The black people and black males and black females don't need to get their act together as far as that's concerned, because it's a total mess and always has been under the system of white supremacy, because they made it so. All right? We haven't got any of that straight. Now they're coming up with all the different varieties of sexuality where we can expand, as they say, and not only just expanding just to be expanding, but it's supposed to be an improvement. An improvement without telling you what's the improvement. How? What is it we're going to be doing that would be an improvement over male with female? But they're telling you it's an improvement indirectly, but they're not going into specifics about answering enough questions about how is it an improvement and what is it supposed to improve. In other words, what's supposed to be the grandiose result of all of this? If you have maybe 30 or 40 different types of sexualities, what's supposed to be the result of it? I mean, what is it that black people are supposed to gain that they don't have now? That's what they're telling us. But they are not telling us what it is to be gained. They say it's a gain, it's progress. You people need to wake up. You're asleep. You've been sleeping on this for too long, and you need to be liberated. You need this type of dimension to your lives and whatnot on a huge scale, and somehow, by some, we're not going to tell you right away because you're not asking. Nobody's talking about the details. Nobody's talking about which particular act that you commit will be an improvement over some other act, and then telling you why. See, they're not telling you this. They're not telling you the political consequences and the economic consequences. They're not giving any details about this. They're just telling you it's a great improvement over your minds, over your liberal attitudes, over your freedom. If you want to improve freedom and expand it, this is the way to go. 20, 30 different types of sexualities. All right, well, we'll look into it. We'll try to be logical and objective about it, all right, and look at it. But you're not going into any details. You are just putting labels out here and saying, go for it, and then walking off. And that's where the treachery is. Because the white supremacists do this not only in sex, they do this in every area of activity. Just give you a fancy label and then walk off without going into details. If you're talking about economics, they'll give you a fancy label. They'll say, well, you should be a communist, or you should be a capitalist, or you should be a socialist. No details nowhere about how you're going to get from point A to point B and what the result is going to be. And that's another thing they don't talk about, what the result is going to be 50 years from now, 100 years from now. They don't tell you anything about that. They don't go anywhere near it. They won't answer a single question about it. All right? And then start demonstrating by example what the results will be. All right? Which is what we should always ask for. Demonstrate, sir, what the result is going to be of what you're talking about. Somewhere down the road, what the final result will be.
The question mode. Why one should ask questions. Let's see here. I have a caller on the line, and I have a Gmail from South Africa. But let's get the caller. Okay, caller, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What's your second question, sir?
The second question is about the Indians, right?
Right. The so-called Indians is that we are the Indians, and the Indians is nothing but a term of they thought they was in India, and that the so-called Indians is black, and they enslaved us here. And they after they enslaved us, because most of the so-called Indians is farmers, and they knew how to grow corn and so forth. So the so-called invaders subjugated them, forced them into labor, and then expanded their territory by taking the so-called Indians under gunpoint to territories that they couldn't even grow anything. It was really murdered them in a sense. It was all kind of stories that the water was poisoned. They poisoned the food. The trinkets and the guns they gave them was backfired on them. And so-called Indians, they didn't want to assimilate into the urban. Well, the question is that you come from Oklahoma, and they sent all the so-called Indians into Oklahoma territory. When you was in Oklahoma, isn't that correct? And most of the so-called blacks came from the so-called tribes nationwide that they was forced off their ancestral land into a barren land.
Well, if I understand your question, the white supremacists, everywhere they have gone on the planet. See, we sometimes just think of white supremacy being in what we call the Western Hemisphere. White supremacy is worldwide. They use the same techniques over and over again everywhere. So, in answer to your question, within what I have written in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, whatever they did in Oklahoma, they did in New York, they did in Johannesburg, South Africa. They have done the same pattern everywhere there are non-white people. See, the categories are non-white. If you're non-white, just do stuff according to the white supremacist code. Confuse them. Have them fighting each other. Set off all kinds of confusion in all 9 areas of activity. That's the one thing that they do everywhere. All kinds of confusion in all 9 areas of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Cause confusion, and then have the confusion lead to non-constructive activity, because that's what confusion itself does. Anytime people are confused, they wind up doing things that are non-constructive. Mm-hmm. So the first order of business is to see to it that non-white people, everywhere they go, are confused in everything that they do. Oh. And then they start in being confused. They start doing things just any kind of old way, going about, even their ambitions. You ask a black person, even today, well, what is your ambition? Well, my ambition is to be somebody. Be somebody by doing what? See, that's another thing. The white supremacists are very skimpy on details. When they come around, they'll make all kinds of grand proposals, but no details about how to get from point A to point B. That's reserved strictly for the white supremacists to determine. And they do this everywhere.
Yes.
So when they start talking about labels like what tribe did this and what tribe, the white supremacists don't pay any attention to that. They just want to know, are you white? If you're not white, there's 2 things in the white code. If you're not white, you're supposed to be mistreated and dominated, period. That's all they care about, dominating and mistreating. Mm-hmm. For what? Fun, glory, and material comfort.
And what's the second thing, Mr. Fuller? What's the second thing, Mr. Fuller? Hello?
Hello, that was it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You said there were 2 things. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Let's do this here. Particularly for the person that was in accounting. Listen, donations for the second hour. We here at Talk Time Radio, thank you for all of your support thus far. However, we still need your support. We are still trying to reach a remaining goal of $1,800 to cover operating costs for the year. Thank you. Again, thank you for the continuing support for the second hour of the compensatory concept. So don't forget to send your donations in. They had it up on the screen where you can do that at. And somebody had asked about that. If you want to do an electronic check, K&E World Network LLC, E. Dozier, 625 at gmail.com. There are two others that I will do at a different time. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. Podcasts are available. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. I got a caller on the line, and I got a Gmail, Mr. Fuller, from Brother Mangaloo from South Africa that I'm hoping that we can get in. All that and more coming up next here on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Stay tuned.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is proud to present the compensatory concept. It is an effective system for countering the effects of white supremacy. TalkTainmentRadio.com is able to carry the first hour. However, the cost for the second hour is exceeding our limited budget. That is why we ask for your kind assistance in keeping the second hour on the air. If you believe like we do, help us in this struggle for justice. Go to the gold donate button on the TalkTainmentRadio.com web page and hit the gold donate button. That's the gold donate button. And please donate. Help us to keep the second hour of the compensatory concept on the air. Thank you.
For the best home fragrance and beauty products, shop Ash Kickin online.
That's ASHKICKIN.
Made with 100% natural quality ingredients and handcrafted with your family in mind, Ash Kickin products are better than those other guys. Ash Kickin candles, incense, body butter, face moisturizer, and hair moisturizer are priced just right, and you can get yours at 10% off with coupon code TALK17. Support this 100% black-owned business and get your home and body smelling and feeling all right.
That's ASHKICKIN.
Shop Ash Kickin' online at www.ashkickin.com.
Stand by for an important announcement for renters and investors.
You have probably heard about this bad economy and high foreclosure rate. I'm here to bring you hope. Every foreclosed property is a blessing or a deal for a new buyer or investor. These properties are selling every day all over Central Ohio for several reasons. They are equity rich, worth tens of thousands of dollars above their price. There is down payment money available and remodeling funds if needed. Don't let the doom and gloom news keep you from your dream of home ownership. Call Linco Realty today at 865-9614. That's 865-9614. Call now. Always remember, these times, like all times, are good times if we but know what to do with them. They also have programs for investors who want to get off the couch and run with the big dogs. Call Linco today at 865-9614 or log on to repohomeslist.com.
This is Al Edmondson, owner of a Cutter Brother Rest Barbershop. I'm calling on all barbers and beauticians. It's time for us to unite as one. We can serve our communities better together. Join the Ohio Black Barber Beauty Network. For more information, visit www.obbn.org or call 614-427-3226 to get more information. Be the change that you want to see in your community. Join our network.
Looking for something special for your club or group? Take a trip. Cruise planners will help you plan the event of a lifetime. Explore exotic places from Africa to Asia, Bermuda to Las Vegas to Hawaii.
with special offers that make it affordable and exciting. Click on to www.greatgetawaytrips.com for great deals or call today at 614-707-SHIP. That's 614-707-7447.
Sex Code War by Kahari Inaharo, the author of the Essence Magazine bestseller Race Code War, is releasing his second book, Sex Code War. Be on the lookout for Sex Code War.
If you or someone you know is abusing drugs and or alcohol and want to stop the abuse, contact APDS at 1409 East Livingston Avenue. Office hours are 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily and 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday. APDS is certified by the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and primarily funded through the Adam H. Board. Fees are based on your income and Medicaid is always accepted. For more information, call 614-253-4448.
Here's an idea. You've heard of the notion of pay it forward? It comes from the 2000 movie Pay It Forward. Basically, the premise is helping someone with no expectations of payback, providing assistance to someone, passing information on, simply doing a good deed for a total stranger, and instead of allowing them to pay it back, ask them to pay it forward. Doing favors for other people and asking them to do the same. The principle is the same as multi-level marketing, except that instead of soap or vitamins, it's generosity between strangers that is being passed on. Pay It Forward is mentoring. It's volunteering in your community. It's shoveling a neighbor's snow or cutting an elderly person's grass for them or taking a senior to the store. Don't wait for someone else to do something good. Do it yourself. It starts with you. Talktainment Radio strongly embraces the notion of pay it forward. In fact, we just did.
Do you overcook your pasta? Do you mix your lights with your darks and tell long, complicated jokes that have no punchline? Do you have trouble wrapping gifts? Sound like a hyena when singing Happy Birthday and have no idea how the metric system works? Well, if you answered yes to any of the above questions, you may have what it takes to adopt a teen from foster care, because teens don't need perfection, they need you. So if you can't tie a Windsor knot, forget to defrost the chicken, can't tell a latte from a cappuccino, confuse North and South Dakota, overuse commas, throw a frisbee like it's a flounder, and still believe kids really do love lima beans, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. For more information on how you can adopt, call 1-888-200-4005 or go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You got the power.
Okay, TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our topic today is the question mode. The question mode. Why one should ask questions. Okay, let's do this here. Let me get the page together. Alrighty, there we go. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. But it is at this particular time, which is one of the more important times of the program, we have Mr. Fuller talk about his book. Mr. Fuller, talk about your book.
Yes. I think that I'm going to preface this with this. I think that in this discussion this morning, in my zeal to explain what I was talking about, I may have caused some confusion. So we can go directly to the book, and I hope that the book helps to clear up what confusion I may have caused, because I tried to say so many things in so many different ways, and may not have done it very well. I don't think that I did. But you can go to the textbook for victims of white supremacy that you can get by going to producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of what I call a code for non-white people. The white supremacists have a code for everything that they do. That's why they are successful. They're the most successful political and religious operation that the world has ever seen. And they did it very efficiently and still doing it very efficiently and very smoothly with very few glitches. It's because they have a code for doing it. They don't leave anything unstudied. They, like we were talking about earlier this morning, about how they are attacking, committing great aggression, you might say, in the eighth area of activity, and that is this area of sex. They're attacking the non-white people of the entire planet under the guise of being more liberal, giving them more freedom, and actually helping them sexually by what the code calls, under one umbrella, sexual sabotage. That's all it really is. It's just like in any war, you commit acts of sabotage if you want to underline people. So they are doing it under the guise of helping. But it's actually sexual sabotage. That's exactly what it is. The effect is going to be making black people weaker, not stronger than they already are. But you can get the textbook for victims of white supremacy that covers all of these 9 areas, makes suggestions about what the individual person can do and say, including some of the things that have been said this morning. These are things should be said, the questions that should be asked. And the book is full of questions to be asked in every area of activity. But you can get it by going to producejustice.com.
Okay.
Producejustice.com. A compensatory counter-racist code.
All righty. You're listening to TalkTainmentRadio.com, the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call, or you can Gmail me at the numeral number 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY at gmail.com. Our subject today is the question mode. One must always ask questions. And we are learning by the suggestions of Mr. Fuller on to ask questions. And importantly, why are we doing it? What is the compensatory logic behind that in your pursuit for justice against white supremacy, racism? Mr. Fuller, going to the Gmails. Let's see here. And I'm looking here. Let's see here. Okay, here it goes. This comes from Mario. He says this. Please ask Mr. Fuller these following questions. Number 1, under the system of racial white supremacy, what constructive purpose can traveling, vacationing, sightseeing, etc. serve for non-whites?
The question is traveling.
What constructive purpose can traveling, vacationing, sightseeing, etc. serve for non-whites?
Oh, well, I've heard the old cliche saying, traveling broadens one. Now, I think that means that you learn more when you travel. I know that it's something to that. Because what do you mean by travel? Travel. You're traveling all the time. So the more you see, the more you're exposed to different things when you travel. If you take one step, that's traveling. When a baby taking one step, that baby is traveling. And so let's look at it like that. what is travel? If travel is just moving about where? Wherever, from wherever you happen to be, to another place. So when you move from where you are to another place, and even getting to that other place where you stop again, you stop your movement, you're no longer traveling, in between the place where you started and the place where you finally stopped, or temporarily stopped, you saw things and heard things and maybe did things that you didn't do or didn't see where you were when you started.
Mm-hmm.
So it's logical to think that the benefits of traveling, depending on what you're looking for, you should have some idea of why you're traveling, is to, as the saying goes, broaden yourself, which means learning. Like I say, I'm still learning.
Yes.
Well, did I ever learn anything by traveling? And the answer is directly, yes.
Okay.
I learned things. I learned things that I didn't know about before.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, we're going to have to pause or give me the sign, so we'll pick it up on the second hour. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour and Mr. Fuller's response to this question.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
All righty. Welcome to the second hour of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio. And again, you are now in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Fuller, and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. And this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. Call-in number is 1-877-932-9766. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. We are on television on the YouTube channel. Just go to the YouTube channel, type in the word Talktainment, then radio, then scroll down to where it says Talktainment number 2. Hit that live. You're there. And hit the share, rather the subscribe and the like button. And finally, you can hear the entire program going to facebook.com/Talktainment. Our subject today is in the question mode. And if you missed any part of the first hour, Mr. Fuller addresses that. As a matter of fact, he's been addressing it the whole time that we've been on the air on Talktainment Radio, staying in the question mode. And you will hear that over and over and over again. Okay, Mr. Fuller, you were answering before we take the phone call. You were answering the question by Brother Mario about the constructive purpose of traveling, vacationing, and sightseeing, to asking what purpose does that serve for non-whites? And you were right in the middle of, near the end of it before we ask a second question. Would you like to continue that or go on to the second part of that, please?
No, I'd like to continue that because it's one thing that I definitely want people to think about that's in the code book. This thing about traveling, if you don't have a constructive reason for doing so, don't do it. Particularly if it's going to cost you a whole lot of money to do it. Traveling costs money. So you don't travel no place if you cannot afford to do it. Don't travel just to be traveling and so-called vacationing, just to be vacation. What are you vacating? I mean, you're vacating one place and going somewhere else, to fill that place. Fill up space in that other place you're going to. So you ask yourself, is it going to be worth it? You don't travel, you should travel to improve something. In other words, you should be able to, after you finish traveling, if you have spent a lot of money, you should be able to get a return on your investment. What was your return? What was the return on your investment in all of that traveling? Because when people first thought of traveling to sightsee, it was because there was no way for them to see what the site was without going there. But then someone invented something called photography, television. You have something in your hand right today in 2019 where you can travel and sightsee all over the world right there in your hand.
Yes.
It's not like you have to hitch up a horse and buggy and go 1,000 miles and take you forever to get there. Like in the old days, someone would tell you about a place and what the place looked like. And you say, well, I'd like to really know what that place looks like by seeing it. You can do that instantly by hitting a button. So this thing about traveling now isn't what it's cut out to be as far as people just trying to make money. Off of you're going from one place to another. Come here, come there, That's what they will say.
Yes, sir.
Stop and think about it. Come over here and come over there for what? Well, I got something for you to see. You say, well, what is it you want me to see? Well, I want you to see this haystack here because you can't see it now. How come I can't see it now? Put your camera up. Put your information phone up, and take a picture of it. I can see it. Oh, now I know what it looks like instantly. And I don't have to go and book airline tickets and all like that to come and look at that haystack.
And you're still in the question mode.
Yes. Why do I need to go spend all this money to go from point A to point B when I can get point B to come to me? Think of that.
All righty.
Why do I need to do that? I get point B to come to me. I want to see different parts of the Grand Canyon. I can see different parts of the Grand Canyon without going there. Or can I? Well, it's not the same. Oh, well, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the same, depending on what it is I want to learn about the Grand Canyon. Now, if I'm thinking about maybe setting up shop there or something like that, where I can get a whole lot of more gain than I already have financially or something, then I will go there physically.
Yes.
but you don't have to travel physically in order to learn about a lot of things or enjoy a lot of things. We go to the movies, and we are transferred mentally to places everywhere, just through the movies themselves.
Yes.
At one time, there was no such thing as motion pictures. You couldn't do that. You'd actually have to go to see what it was like.
Yes, sir.
In Dodge City.
Okay. And before we take the phone call, let's wrap this up, the second part of the question. He says, using compensatory logic, what factors should non-whites consider when deciding where to live?
Where to live?
Yes, sir.
Oh, always consider comfort and what you can learn and how you can improve yourself. But first thing, you want material comfort. You don't want to be in a place where bullets are coming through your bedroom window. Sirens are going off all in the middle of the night. And unfortunately, that's where black people are usually concerned. Some place where those things are going to be happening in abundance.
Yes, sir.
You're going to always be in fear of going to the bus stop. That's how the white supremacists want it. So, for that reason, unfortunately, black people have to try to go where there are not too many other black people, or if there are other black people, they have to be spread out. In fact, people, period. Your next door neighbor, and I've said this just to give you a picture of how it should be so far away that when you are standing in, for example, your front yard, and you know what they look like, you know it's three people in that house next door to you, but if you see them out in the yard, you can't tell which one of the three people you're looking at. You're going to actually have to go down, cut the distance so that you can actually see the person clearer.
Yes, sir.
But you can never make out which one of the people, or even the gender of the person. Say if it's one male and two females in that house. Well, you can't tell one from the other or even identify them, even though you know all three of the people, by standing in your yard and looking at their yard, because it's just that distance. There's an old saying, good fences make good neighbors. But there's something even better, distance.
Okay.
And you should only contact people. I'm going to add that.
Okay.
Period. Contact any people when you have something constructive to do or say. Black people do not make contacts very well. We try to claim that we do, but our contacts are ragged. Very ragged.
Very ragged, yes, sir.
We make contact for no reason at all, and usually it winds up being something very non-constructive when we make contacts. So part of the code is don't make any contact with any person, because when you're talking about, the question was, where do you live? Well, what do you mean by live? It means where you are at any given time, and where you are should be someplace where you only contact people, period, white or non-white, male or female, whomever they are, when there's something constructive going on. Black people got to get that ingrained in us, probably for the first time in recorded history. Every contact that we make with anybody, period, should have a constructive result. No more non-constructive contacts.
Got it. All righty.
And that is something that's going to be kind of difficult to do, but that should be our goal.
Okay.
No more non-constructive contacts with anybody.
All right. Our focus today is on the question mode. And we're having Mr. Fuller address that. And right now, let's take a phone call. Okay, caller, you have waited patiently. It is your time to speak with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. This is Mansour calling again from D.C. Mr. Fuller, last week you said that anytime you're black on this planet and you're doing something of constructive value, you are putting white supremacy in big-time danger. If I spend most of my time on the job working for white supremacists who get paid twice as much as I do to do half as much work as me, how am I putting white supremacy in big-time danger if I'm spending most of my time at work every week?
Well, that comes under labor. That's one area of activity. So if you can't do it in that area of activity, you try to do it in all the other areas of activity as best you can. And eventually you try to do it in that area of activity, simply because you're what? You're a prisoner of war. See, the code is written for a situation that we're in, not in an imaginary situation. And if you're black on the planet in 2019, you are a prisoner of war. And the war is being made, has been made, and you're in captivity against you because you're black in the system of white supremacy, which is the only government on the planet. There are a lot of labels of governments, but they're just labels. The only real label that fits is, in capital letters, the system of white supremacy, which is racism. It's the most powerful government of people on planet Earth in recorded history. And it nullifies the existence of all other so-called governments. They're not really governments at all. There's no such thing as an American government in a system of white supremacy. There's no such thing as an African government in a system of white supremacy, or an Asian government in the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is the only show in town that really counts. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they got the muscle, brain-wise and physical-wise. They run everything on the planet, directly or indirectly.
I'm hearing some noise in the background there, Mr. Fuller.
Hello?
I'm hearing some very loud noise in the background. Okay, it stopped.
Yeah, I'm hearing this too.
Okay.
All right, that was the helicopter. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
But that in answer to the question, and you got to watch me too, because sometimes I get away from the basics.
Yeah, because I just want to know, how am I putting white supremacy in big time danger? Because I'm just at work all the time with white supremacists who are just watching me work.
Oh, well, you're not at work all the time, are you?
Well, feels like it, but technically not all the time.
Well, no, technically, I mean, either, well, depends on what you mean by at work. We're always in the prison system. But, like, what do you do when you're in a prison? You do the best you can. And anytime you're trying to do anything constructive, like if on your job, try to use your job to learn things that you didn't know before. That's another thing, because you're in contact with people. Try to find out what other people's jobs are and learn as much about what they are doing as you know about what you're doing. That's like under the frame in a prison. That's why I keep using the movie Shawshank Redemption. He wasn't learning much down there with the other prisoners. So what did he do? He worked his way up. It took him years to do it, so that he was working in the warden's office, even though the warden came and got him because he had skills. See, people look for people who have skills. You draw people to you when you have skills. That you may observe that. Yes, anytime you have skills that people want or need, they come looking for you. So when they come looking for you and you perform your skills, yes, you're helping them, but you're also helping yourself, because now you're in another environment. Like Andy the Frame went from the woodwork shop to the warden's office. That was an improvement in his environment. And in that environment, he learned how to handle the warden's finances, which is what he was doing. So when he got out, he had the warden's money too. See, so that was, someone asked on this program earlier about traveling. He traveled from his cell to the warden's office. Now, that was a short trip, but it meant what? An improvement over the cell that he was in. See, we have to start thinking logically about everything. And you can't be where you're not. But you can probably get where you're not through some project, through some process of trying to improve whatever it is that you're doing. You have to start from where you are, because you're not outside of the prison. And the ultimate objective, and you keep this in mind, is to eliminate the prison as a prison and replace it with something that's better than a prison.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. All righty. TalkTameAtRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's three I'm going to share with you. Wiggins World with host Stacey Wiggins. All in the Family with S. Yolanda Robinson, and New Money with Drew and Janae. Now, these shows are all exclusive to TalkTameAtRadio.com. All you have to do is go to the TalkTameAtRadio.com homepage, click on programs, and then give a sample of the programs that you would like to listen to. And if you'd like them, give them a like and a subscribe button. All that from TalkTameAtRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, and today's subject is to be able to be in the question mode. Why do we do that? Why is it necessary in our defeat of racism, white supremacy? Why is that important? And Mr. Fuller,
why is it important to stay in the question mode?
Yes, sir.
Because all problems, this is the premise. Now, someone may do some research and get back to all of us, including me, and say that, no, Fuller, you're incorrect about that. But I'm making a flat statement. And flat statements should be questioned. Okay, so the flat statement is this. All problems, without exception, are solved through the process of questions and answers. You're not going to solve a problem, any problem, without a series of questions and answers. There's one question, and then you don't move to the second question before you answer the first one. That's another thing. Don't move to the second question until you have answered the first question. Otherwise, you're going to get what? The enemy of problem solving, and that is confusion. The process of questions and answers eliminates what? Confusion. Until you have a question answered, you're going to have what? Confusion.
Confusion, yes.
And confusion means what? Non-constructive activity. It's going to lead to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to make what we call mistakes. Mistake after mistake after mistake.
Yes, sir.
Why? Because you didn't have the answers to questions. That's why.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But if you ask enough questions and get enough answers, you'll solve all problems.
All right.
In the universe.
In the universe. Okay.
Now, if there's any other way to do it, I would like to be informed of that procedure.
You can include me on that one also. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Go ahead, state your question.
Hello. So the question that the caller just asked about, he's going to work and.
Hello? You still there? Okay. I guess he, I guess he hung up there. Sorry about that. Wow. Okay. Call back, brother, because you were jarbled there. They'll let you straight through, so that you can ask the question that you were going to ask. Okay. Listen, when you make your donations, which okay, is that him calling back? Go ahead and see if that's him. Yeah. Here's another area that you can do to send your donations. If you do it by mail, okay, not getting right on here. If you do it by mail, do it like this: K&E World Network LLC, DBA Talktainment Radio, 462 Walnut Street, Post Office Box 6184, Columbus, Ohio 43206. That's if you were going to do the snail mail or mail it in. Okay, go ahead, caller, with your question.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
So I have questions of my own, but I just wanted to ask a question about what the gentleman before me just asked about working. So he was saying that he feels as though that he's at work a lot, and he doesn't know if that's quite fighting the system of white supremacy. But I just wanted to add to that and get your comments, Mr. Fuller. A black person staying out of jail or prison or what you call greater confinement is fighting against the system of white supremacy. Years ago, I personally was in greater confinement for 8 months, and it's a waste of time, and people are working for pennies in there. So I just wanted to add that you staying out of there is fighting the system of white supremacy. Do you agree with that, Mr. Fuller?
Absolutely. 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 The white supremacists want particularly every black male, to go through that process. This is very important to know. This should be taught in school. The white supremacist system is set up for every black male to have the experience of what the code book calls greater confinement. You're already confined. You're confined before you're born, based on your skin color.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to put you in greater confinement. You're supposed to go in the northwestern hemisphere. I would say, I usually use this as a cliche. It may not even be true, but as a sort of a guideline, about the 9th grade, you're supposed to be right there. You're supposed to drop out and head straight for the jailhouse.
Wow.
You might as well just walk out of the classroom now. When they say, what grade am I in? Well, you're in the 9th grade now, Johnny. Oh, 9th grade? I'm in the 9th grade? Okay. Well, so I might as well just pick up my books right now and walk over to the nearest jail and check in. Because that's how they got everything planned by the time I hit the 9th grade. Really, stop and think about it. By the time you hit the 9th or 10th grade, they got it planned that if you're a black male in the northwestern hemisphere, your next stop, usually during the summer, when you get your first summer's break, or even before, while class is going on, sometimes they might come in and haul you out of the class for something that you did, all right, because they got it set up.
Mm-hmm.
That just about then, you're in the 9th grade now, so you probably got a little job on the side, but you're not getting paid much. So you start stealing. See, they got all kinds of little things set up for you. And they know how you go about stealing because they're the greatest thieves in the world. So black people who think that they can be slick by stealing from the white supremacists, they're not slick at all. We don't know nothing about stealing. They steal whole continents.
Come on now.
They know everything about stealing. So black people who go into a clothing shop and think that they're getting away with something, they're just letting you get away. Just like playing with if you know anything about fishing, you let the fish, you just give it, that's why they have a reel on a pole. See, what do they do with the reel? They reel the fish out. Let the fish think it is getting away. All right? And they just let it go and let it go.
Give us some play.
Then little by little, they pull it in. They start pulling that reel back in. Next thing you know, you're in the boat. Okay? And so they have done this all down through history. The slave boats and everything else. They just reel you in. Okay? And they do it in the northwestern hemisphere. Black males, they know when they see you out there playing as a little boy. You're, 6 years old now. You're on the playground. You're wide-eyed. The white supremacists roll by in their car, and they look at you, and they say, I know exactly where he's going. They know it. Why? Because they planned it. They planned it before you were born. So in answer to the question, if you can do anything, stay out of that jail. Don't get picked up for that nickel and dime stuff and whatnot. And if you get pulled over, remember, if you're driving a car, if you're 16 years old or 17 or whatever age you're permitted to drive, and you get pulled over, the 3 F's, remember those. Don't fuss, don't fight, and don't flee. Why? Because it doesn't work. That's why. Doesn't make any difference about how you feel. If you do any one of those 3 things, it's not going to work in your favor. It's not going to work in your favor.
Yes, sir.
You're a black person being pulled over. You think you got something going for you. You haven't. Nobody's coming to your rescue.
Absolutely.
You are alone. Remember that. You are alone.
We had a sport.
And so don't start going into your 9th grade act like you do on the playground when, you're bouncing the basketball and somebody knocks you down or something like that, and you get up with this woof, woof, woof.
Yeah. Let's see here. I have a caller on the line, and I have a Gmail from South Africa, but let's get the caller. Okay, caller, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Go ahead, caller.
Yes. Okay, this the guy who just called, who added the comment, but I had questions on my own. So I'll be really quickly. The first question that I wanted to ask you, Mr. Fuller, is what do they mean by America is in debt to China? Now you say that the white supremacists are the most powerful and they're and they control everything and they run everything. So what do they mean by America owes the Chinese money? Have you ever thought about that one?
Sure. I think about all these things I hear. But I know one thing, the white supremacists, to the extent that the white supremacists have anything to do with it, and they have something to do with everything with non-white people, and the people who call themselves Chinese are classified as non-white, the white supremacists are just talking. They're just saying we owe we're in debt to some people called Chinese. They don't care anything about that. They may say that, but they don't really care anything about it. And they don't see any consequences of it. They've already figured that because they are the masters of money. Why? Because they are the masters of people. See, when you are the masters of a person, when you are the master of a person, a slave master, you are the master of everything that's connected with that person. You have mastery over that person, and everything that person has that he or she calls his or her own, you have it. That's what makes you supreme. Otherwise, the supremacy doesn't even fit your title. The white supremacists are supreme when it comes to non-white people. Otherwise, you could not charge them with white supremacy if they weren't supreme. Supreme meaning what? Having absolute power. They can make you do anything that they want you to do, and you can't make them do nothing. That's supreme. And so, if there is such a thing as white supremacy, and I believe that there is, that's just a lot of talk about, oh, yeah, we're in debt. Why? Because we chose to be on paper. But we really don't have to pay nobody nothing because we're in charge of everything. When you're in charge of everything, you don't owe anybody anything, or rather, you may owe everybody everything that you're in charge of everything.
Yeah.
But you don't have to pay them if you got the muscle. And the white supremacists say, I got the muscle.
Yes,
see,
sir.
when the rubber really meets the road and everybody gets through arguing back and forth about who did what and what you're not going to put up with and all like that, the white supremacists simply say, okay, all right, this discussion is over. All right? So if you don't like what I'm doing, come at me and see how that works.
Yeah.
Come at me and see how that works. See, the white supremacists, they don't like, nowadays in 2019, they play little games with that. Like another skill that they have is they always know how to act like they're weaker than they are. That blindsides a whole lot of dark-skinned people, even on a one-on-one basis. See, so the white supremacists are very skilled at playing like they are weak, to bait you in, to test them. And then you get blindsided with the strength that they do have.
Okay.
And people all over the world have fallen for that over and over again who are classified as non-white.
What's your second question, sir?
Oh, okay. And that's why that number keeps going up, right, Mr. Fuller? It's in the trillions now. But
oh yeah, they don't care. They're the masters. See, because they'll at a certain point they'll just simply hit a button, and all of that'll be scrambled anyway. They'll mess up they can mess up your economy at the push of a button. That's another thing. A lot of black people think that, well, if we get our own place and get our own money, then everything will be all right. They ain't got no power over us. They got power over you as long as they can kick you around physically. As long as they can tell you what to do and you got to do it, or else, mafia style, organized crime style, because that's what they are, a master criminal operation, and the biggest and the most powerful that the world has ever seen when it comes to non-white people, all right? When all the arguments, we're good at arguing. We can argue our points and all like that. But when the white supremacist says, hey, this conversation is over. Now, if you want to make me do something, make me.
Yeah,
make me. Make me do it and see what happens to you. You'll wonder what fell on you, you and your grandmother.
All right, thank you, caller, for your call. Thank you for your call, caller.
Oh, and quickly, the second question is Mr. Fuller, do you feel as though that the white supremacists plan on bringing slavery back? Because that's a lot of the thoughts of current speakers, that their goal is to bring physical slavery back. Do you feel that way? Thank you.
It's already. It never went away.
It never went away.
Yes.
Never.
A gentleman named Floyd McKissick of the Congress of Racial Equality in the 1960s said the slaves weren't freed, they were fired.
Okay. McKissick said the slaves were...
He said in a I think it was Jet magazine at the time, he said the slaves weren't freed, they were fired.
They were fired.
So for years I repeated that, and then one day I thought that I would put a little spin on it, on what he said, and I said, well, let's think of it this way. The slaves weren't freed, and they weren't fired. They were transferred.
Okay.
And that's what I've held to this day. See, in other words, slavery just means mistreatment. First of all, we look at the word. What does slavery mean? People say, well, is slavery coming back? What is slavery? Slavery is any time you are being mistreated, even for 5 minutes, and you don't know what to do about it. you are now a slave for 5 minutes. That's the way to look at it, because that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
If you're being mistreated, slavery is nothing but a form of mistreatment. And the white supremacists are the supreme masters of mistreatment on the planet.
Let's do this here. This is from Brother Malangu from South Africa. He says this. Recently, Mr. Fuller made the following statement. Quote, "The seeds of distraction of the system of white supremacy are built into the system itself." End of that quote. Could you ask Mr. Fuller to expound on that statement? Thank you, Al from South Africa.
Because you look at it like in physics or in medicine. The antidote to a poison is in the poison itself. Or somebody told me that when I got a vaccination for the first time. They said, we are actually putting what we are fighting into you, so you'll build up immunity to it. And I thought that was a contradiction. But then, that's the way it is, I guess. I think it's still that way. The antidote to a poison has some of the characteristics of the poison itself. Otherwise, it couldn't relate to it. So the seeds of the destruction of white supremacy is built into the system itself. And the non-white people, the black people of this planet, are the epicenter of that seed. So we will be, when we work with the intention, that's the first thing we have to get, the intention of replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice, rather than what we are doing, which the code calls something else is on the back of the book. It's a bunch of so-called bullet points, quote unquote. They are points on the back of the book, the textbook for victims of white supremacy. And that's one of them.
Okay.
About the seeds of the destruction of white supremacy. It's on there somewhere, I think. Yes.
Okay. That's go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. And it's definitely on the back, in the back page of the original textbook, the 1984 edition.
Okay.
The seeds of the destruction. But that's what that means.
Okay.
That we are the element within the system of white supremacy. We're not outside of it. We are in it.
We're in it, yes.
So therefore, it's just a matter of us becoming the antidote to it, right in the belly of it, and we erode the belly and the whole body. The kidneys, the everything. We erode it. And how do we do it? By speech, thought, speech, and action, the way that we act. Just like if it's something in your digestive tract or your stomach that you are using to build up, but it shouldn't be there, it's going to burst out of there.
It sure is.
Once it decides to do so. I mean, the elements are in place to do so. Yes. So what are these elements? The will to do so. The elements have will. The smallest elements have will, or they wouldn't, they wouldn't move. All kind of microbes, or whatever you want to call them, they have a will. Sperm has will. Sperm in a woman's ovary has will. How do you know it has will? Because it keeps moving toward that egg.
Yes.
I mean, it's something motivating it.
Okay.
It keeps going that direction. It keeps going. This keeps going.
Okay, I have to condense the program here, so let me do this, please.
Right.
Okay, TalkToHim@radio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkToHim@radio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Fuller. We've been talking about being in the question mode, and we've been taking your calls and Gmails. But it is at this time, Mr. Fuller, he actually segued into it maybe about a minute ago when he spoke about what was on the back of the book. So, Mr. Fuller, with that continued thought, before we take this, before we take this phone call, could you speak to your book?
Yes. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's produce. We're trying to produce a product growing out of the system of white supremacy into another system. And that system is justice. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook, and I've been informed by the end of this month we should have the word guide back up too.
Good.
Because words are the tools to be used to help to dismantle the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is put together and held together, rather, mostly by words, the type of words that they use, and the definitions that are given to words. Well, we come up, or should come up, the victims of white supremacy, with counter words. We can use the same words, because words are nothing but sounds anyway. We can use the same sounds with new definitions, with new sounds in the definitions, because they're nothing but interpretations of how you see the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's all words are, all right? But they have moved, the white supremacists use language in such a way that it supports white supremacy. And we don't have to study a new language. We can take the same words, and this comes down to what the caller that just from South Africa just said. You can take the same words that the white supremacists give us, put new definitions on them, like in the code book, we have the definition of the word guide of the code book. We have the definition of America, and the definition of Africa, and the definition of Asia. An African, an American, and an Asian are people who practice justice. So there's no such thing as America in the system of white supremacy, because you can't practice justice in the system of white supremacy. That's a contradiction. And you can't practice justice. You can't be an American in the system of white supremacy, because an American is a person that practices justice. So it's impossible to be an American in the system of white supremacy. It's not going to happen. You can aspire to be one, and you should. You should aspire to be an African and an Asian, but there's no way to do that in the system of white supremacy. Now, according to what? According to the word guide, the counter-racist word guide. Now, people will say, well, you just can't make up definitions for words. Yes, you can, because you're going to have to. Otherwise, there's no way to defeat white supremacy. Mm-hmm. You take the same words they give you, give them definitions that they should have, and use those definitions consistently to mean what you have to say when you speak. And if they say, well, you can't say that, well, don't say I can't say it when I just did. That's how I always respond. Mm-hmm. Don't say I can't say it. Say it, I can't say it again. Mm-hmm. But I've already said it now. All right?
Where can they get
and that's the way I'm going to be thinking about it, even if I don't say it.
And where can they
so
get
go to producejustice.com.
Okay, producejustice.com. Okay, caller, you're probably going to be the last one of you are going to be the last one of the day. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller.
It's great to hear from you guys again. I'm always the last caller, it seems like. But I got a great question. Mr. Fuller, what's your thoughts on the words white supremacy being pointed out and recognized by the news media and even the president? Do you feel that it's some sort of trick for suspect white supremacists now to recognize the main problem on this planet?
Well, according to the code, according to what it's in the textbook, everything that the white supremacists do, and that's how this program started off this morning, about the area of sex. And they, I call it sexual sabotage among non-white people.
Yeah, the LGBT
community. Yes, right. Everything that the white supremacists do is designed intentionally to make what? White supremacists stronger. Everything that they do, no matter how it looks on the surface. When you look up and see a person coming, now that doesn't say all white people, but that says the white people who believe in white supremacists. When you see them coming, the racist suspects, your question should be, talking about questions, what are they up to now? Doesn't make any difference how they're starting out, what they're saying. Hey, tell you what I'm going to do. They're great salespeople. Tell you what I'm going to do. They'll pat the black person on the back. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm your friend. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But you're supposed to be thinking all the time, here we go again. Just another one of their tricks, another one of their schemes for doing what? For dominating and mistreating me. Otherwise, he wouldn't be coming to me at all. That's how you have to look at it. Now, if they sometimes surprise us by doing anything opposite of that and stick with it, that's a breakthrough. But until that happens, until there's no more racism, always take the position that any move that a suspected racist makes on this planet is designed to give greater strength to the system of white supremacy. Period.
Perfect. Gotcha. Excellent. 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 It was bothering me for the past month because
don't give it the best way to do it. Don't burden your mind with that. Just say, here they come. What are they up to now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, my brother. Thank you very much. All right.
Perfect. Have a good one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, we have about 2.5 minutes left in today's program. Again, your thoughts on the importance of asking questions for those that may have just tuned in. What are your what constructive information would you have for them?
Yes, when you're around people, period. Just get in the habit of asking questions. That's how you learn. This program itself consists of what? Questions, answers. Now, the answers may not be correct, but an incorrect answer is not an answer. So anybody, including Neely Fuller, particularly Neely Fuller, since he's the person who is supposed to be answering questions, if he makes a mistake, that's a no-no. But Neely Fuller does make mistakes, and the listeners on this program should keep that in mind. See, anything that I suggest, put it to a test. See if it works. Okay? And if I say that the best way to solve problems, or the only way to solve problems, is to ask questions and get correct answers to the questions, because that's how progress is done all throughout the entire universe. If there are any people out there in outer space anywhere, they too have to ask questions and get answers in order to get anything done.
Yes, and apparently you did. The brother from South Africa, Mr. Langu, he just wrote back and told me to tell you thank you for addressing and answering his questions on the seeds of distraction in the system.
But I want him to also ask questions about my answer. Ask himself, and ask himself, did he get an adequate answer? Because the white supremacists, they are great when it comes to answering questions, but sometimes you think that they have answered your question when really they didn't.
All right.
But they sounded like they did.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Brother Magalo, he did address that, so you have homework to do also. Thanks for listening, everybody. TalkTainMenRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com.